G'day and welcome to Crank the Third. My name is Trevor Young and my guest today is Dr. Jen Frahm. Jen is a change leadership expert, a global facilitator, an entrepreneur and someone who's grown her personal brand on an international basis and built a portfolio career off the back of that brand for many, many years. I reached out to Jen after reading a powerful LinkedIn post where she reflected on a question that many of us get asked when we're out there and active and doing stuff and creating content and speaking and writing books and running a business and doing all the things. And that question, Jen said, was that she gets asked is, how do you do it all? And Jen's answer was, well, she doesn't necessarily, but there's a lot more to the story than that. But what Jen does do with, I think, clarity and intention is really worth unpacking. So I reached out to Jen, who's a good friend of mine, and we thought, let's unpack all of these things that she put in this post, and it'll make for a great conversation, and that's what we're going to explore in this episode. Jen, welcome to Crank the Third.
Trevor, lovely to be here, and thank you so much for having me on the show.
Why don't you give the listeners a little bit of a rundown on what you're doing currently, because you have got that multiple things. I don't know how big your business card is, but if you've still got a business card.
It's a holographic business card these days, Trevor.
Okay,
so, look, most of my life is spent as the managing director of the Agile Change Leadership Institute. We're a training and development company that specialises in the space of change and agility and on-demand learning. And so we started that about 6 years ago. And so my focus is really scaling that business now and, taking that even further global. We're in 81 countries, but,
wow.
How do we really intensify our footprint? Alongside that, I also continue to do my keynote speaking at conferences and events, which brings me lots of joy. There is a book that I'm writing at the moment, so that'll be my fourth book that's in the works. And I still continue to keep myself a little bit grounded with a bit of consulting work in the space of change design. So that's what's going on work-wise for me.
Hence the question, how do you do it all? Now, I'll say what your answer is, and I'll just read this little bit of post. This is in your LinkedIn post. Short answer, I don't, far from it. So why don't you set us up and then we'll go through your 11-part answer, which I think will be really insightful for a lot of people who are either out there doing a lot of stuff or wanting to do a lot of stuff and struggle with time. But why don't you walk us through what this post generally and give us a bit of a heads up on it?
Yeah, of course. So I think, I had just posted on LinkedIn that I was working on the new book, and I got quite a few, it triggered something. I got quite a few DMs from people saying versions of how do you do it all? And I think the thing that concerned me most about the DMs were that there were people making comparisons and not feeling good about themselves by virtue of what they were seeing. And so what I really wanted to do with this post was kind of say, it's not so much that I'm doing it all. I do a lot, 100%. We can talk about that. But we need to factor in the fact that you see a lot. And there's a difference between someone doing a lot and someone sharing a lot of what they do. And that, that perception when a person shares a lot. And there's a concept that we teach in the space of change that has really influenced my world view of what I do, which is called working out loud.
Yep.
And working out loud is, narrating your work and making your work visible, regardless of where it's at, which really influences how I live my professional life.
Yeah.
And so, that's what I did with the post was I wanted to say, hey, I share a lot and I do a lot, but I don't do it all. There's a distinction between what the boundaries that I have, and we can unpack some of those, versus what I decide to do and share.
I like that. And another way of saying that is building in public and creating and talking about it and documenting. And I think the author Oster Cleon talked a lot about that in one of his books. And it's been a real thing. And I guess it started with Twitter. That and you and I met each other on Twitter too many years ago. And when Twitter was a village and a community, and we saw a lot of that. And obviously that's ingrained in what you do. And I'm probably a little bit the same as well. And it's the documentation. Actually, it was Gary Vaynerchuk who said, don't create content, document your professional life. And there's parts of that I think that are very effective, which leads us back to that's what you do, and people take notice of that and they follow you because of that. And that's also helped grow your business. So and when you're saying, what was the working out loud?
Working out loud.
Are you talking more about blogging, being on LinkedIn? Obviously, it was probably earlier days Twitter. What does that look like for you?
Look, for me, it is social media platforms. But for someone else, it might be having, in the workplace, it might be having a wall that they share what they're doing in the moment, as it's progressing. So I think the ethos of working out loud is being transparent in what you're doing. So for me, social media platforms, to your point, blogging, LinkedIn, in the old days, Twitter, Instagram, those kind of things are very much the most accessible way for people to see what I'm doing, how I'm doing it, why I'm doing it as I go. So yeah, you've got to choose your platform and have potentially multiple platforms depending on the audiences who might be interested in what you're doing.
I pull this thread a little bit further. Obviously, with a book, it's to write your book in public. I mean, the old days of going away and writing a book and then saying and not telling anyone about it and then going, ta-da, I've got a book. Those days have been well gone for a long time. I mean, a lot of authors now, they talk about writing, which you're doing now. Yep. You talk about writing the book at the start and you'll be dropping ideas out all the way through, getting validation on ideas probably, getting feedback. And it's also you're building it before you sell it sort of thing. I know one guy who actually did a mini podcast series, like 20 episodes before the book. So he was building an audience for the book before he released the book. So there is sense in doing that with a book, and then the cover comes and I know when I did mine, I put the two covers up and it was on LinkedIn and people got to choose which one. And I think it was my best ever post because people love they love a poll and they love book covers. So, but that's that, a book is one. What are the other sorts of things that you're sharing as you go? And you're in a very specific industry.
Yes, that's right. I'm very niche. So a perfect example at the moment, one of the other things that I'm doing with the Agile Change Leadership Institute is developing a new micro course, which will be focused at change leadership from the perspective of the basics. So as I'm working through each lesson, I'm actually generating posts out of that lesson, pushing them out to get feedback, what's resonating, what's not, the type of conversations it's generating. Excuse me, before I finish producing that lesson. We've also got a micro community. So we've got our alumni. We use Mighty Networks for that. And so I'm pushing out stuff there, sharing to, again, test the temperature of some of the concepts, what's important, what's not resonating, those kind of things. So I think that post that people had resonated with, the book sharing, I've got a set of beta readers at the moment. So I had done a series of masterclasses in change communication, and I'm still doing those. I went out to everybody who had done the masterclass over the last 6 months and said, right, I'm now going to turn this into a book because I've really enjoyed, and it's true, it was lovely to immerse so deeply in the space of change communication. And so I went out to everybody who had participated in the masterclass, who had signed up for it, who had gone through the masterclasses, and I said, do you want to be a beta reader? And I will send, each part of the book, get your feedback. And so what I shared in LinkedIn was really the feedback I'd got on part 1 of the book from the beta readers.
Nice.
So, and again, it was the good, the bad, the ugly in terms of, okay, where have I got to change in this book because it's not landed well or people aren't comfortable with it. So, yeah.
And just quickly, just again for context, you probably are dealing more with the corporate world. Who is your target audience? Who do you deal with on a day-to-day basis?
Absolutely. So I deal with a very specific occupational niche, which change practitioners. So they would be change managers, change analysts, project managers, basically anybody who works in a organization to design and introduce change to the workplace. And by extension, then the leaders that work with them.
Right.
So leaders who are on the hook for introducing change into the organisation are also the broader audience that I'm working with.
Very fertile territory, because virtually every large organisation is undergoing change. And once they go through their change, they then do some more change. Pretty much.
It doesn't stop.
It doesn't stop. It doesn't stop. And in fact, probably now with the the emergence of AI, that change is only at high velocity.
Yeah.
Yeah. Terrific. So that, and just a couple of lessons from that too, which this is why I love these conversations, because I never know where they're going to, I know where they're going to start, but I don't know which turns we're going to take. But this whole building in public, or what was your, sorry, you called it?
Working out loud.
Working out loud. I love that.
Yep.
It's something that I think professionals, entrepreneurs, they should do. You should do as part of your day. If you're on social media and you might do the occasional post and just lurk a lot, you might say, I don't know what to create content about, but what are projects you're working on that you're allowed to talk about, of course. And entrepreneurs have been doing, startup entrepreneurs have been doing this for a long time, because that's how they build, I guess, an audience and maybe a community around their ideas and their goals of building a business. And it's powerful. I see it every day, and I think it's very effective, and it's a great way to become social. Otherwise, social media is just media, and this helps the social.
Yeah, Trevor, it does two things. It builds trust.
Yep.
So the transparency builds trust. People know who they're dealing with. They feel more comfortable working with them, spending with them. It builds connection.
Yes.
So someone sees what I post about what I do and they think, oh, actually, this would be a person who'd be interested in Jen, or maybe they'd be a really useful, I know this person is looking for something. So it's also about that force multiplier of building the network.
Yep.
That I just don't, and this is why the entrepreneurs do it, right? Because particularly if you're in the startup land, you're looking for more interested parties in your business.
Yep. That's
why you're building connections through what you're doing, and people know what you're doing.
You're growing this ecosystem, and I think the other part of it is that it does build. I mean, this is classic. I call that classic PR, because PR is all about deepening the level of connection with people who matter most to the success of your business. And, that's pretty much anyone these days, because anyone can be a referrer, anyone can share your content, anyone can be a client, anyone can, influence a purchase decision often. So, I mean, that's where it's powerful, and that's what you're doing. You said connection and trust. Yep. And incredibly important, and transparency, and no more time is that more important than today with the fake elements of AI and what we're all concerned about in that regard. And so the more humanity we can bring in and start with, the more powerful we're going to be in a personal branding sense and what we do in business. All right, we haven't even got to the article yet, your post. So let's do that. You had an 11-part answer. And so, Jen, how do you do it all? And here's your 11-part answer. We'll kick off with the first one, and I love this word, grace.
Yeah. I led with that intentionally, because I think it all starts with grace. If you're not giving yourself grace, then you're going to trip up on everything else that you want to do to be able to make the life you want to live. So for me, grace is the importance of, self-compassion, of giving myself a break, of, when things don't go right, to be at ease with that and forgiving of myself with that. Because otherwise, the beating myself up or the shame that I feel or the struggle that I feel actually prevents me doing anything else. So if you want to do more, you actually, grace greases the pathway to doing more. And it also just feels really nice, right? It's we often talk about in this space, we talk about the grind. Grace removes the grind.
There's a T-shirt there.
Pardon?
There's a T-shirt in that.
There's a T-shirt there. Yeah, because I think, we don't romanticize it, but we make it, the notion of the grind, the whole Gary Vee, all that kind of thing is the holy grail of entrepreneurial life. Well, it's actually not fun at all. It's bloody hard work.
Yeah.
And it's unpleasant. Grace, giving yourself space to breathe and accept that you're not always going to get it right is what actually makes the journey a lot more enjoyable.
Is that something you have to learn over the years? I mean, is it just something that you become wiser to, or
I did.
Yeah,
I had to learn it. I think for me, it's been the last 10 years that I've become much more comfortable with the concept of self-compassion, or not so much comfortable, but probably really aware of how important self-compassion is in the space of change and agility and, wanting to do things. And yeah, that probably wasn't part of my vocabulary 20 years ago.
Mm.
So whether it's the fact that it has risen, you think about Christian Neff and Christopher Germer, the work they've done in this space, it started to become a lot more mainstream, whereas 20 years ago, nobody was talking about it really.
Yeah, yeah.
And, so yeah.
And it's, it's a lot more accepted as a topic to be talking about it. What's some, to bring it to life, what are some things that you've done where this manifests itself in your life?
Good question. I think if I think about, it was a conversation I had this morning, right? It was a conversation I had this morning with somebody else about AI. And I said, I feel like we've got to develop a level of AI zen, because there's this incredible pressure to be keeping up with everything that is all things AI. And so conversations, are you using this? Are you using this? Have you tried this? And so the lack of grace, the lack of self-compassion would be doing extreme anxiety about, I'm not up to speed with all of these things.
Right.
But I responded to the person, I was like, no. And when I have a need, the right AI will show up. I'll ask the right question. That was a question of grace and self-compassion that took myself out of the, I'm not keeping up with the AI. Yeah, I use AI. Am I the most sophisticated user? No. But I'm using what I need at the moment and it's doing well. And that's kind of that equanimity is a conversation of grace.
Yeah.
Around it.
And give yourself permission not to know it all, because
you
can't. Yeah, well, you literally can't. It's moving too quick. But to know enough and to at least be in there learning and using it and stuff like that, but not saying, I have to be the very best at it and I have to know every prompt under the sun and every tool that comes out, because you're just never going to anyway, so why try?
No, and I think, another example, and it probably ties into the point too, the notion of energy. Energy is more important than time. There are some days where I go, I am just not feeling it, right? I am feeling flat, or I'm exhausted. I've been working very hard. So Grace says, go put your feet up. I always follow the money. So have I sent the invoices out that need being sent out? Have I done the work that's going to bring revenue in? If those two things are ticked, then go put your feet up and binge something on Netflix or go for a walk in the bush. They're both actions of grace to say, actually, I'm exhausted or I'm tired, and it's okay to put your feet up if we've done the bare basics of what it is that ticks the business over.
So that is a beautiful segue to this second point of yours, that energy is more important than time. So you've just said there, and this is what you've said in the in the post, I prioritise based on commercial or emotional value. Does it top up the bank account or my emotional capital? I guess because you run your own business and you have that flexibility, that it's on one hand you can do it, but on the other hand you need to set time aside to do it, to preserve your energy.
Yeah, look, and I think in any given day, you will get, and I don't think it's just for those who run their own business. I think this is even for those who live in corporate land or small business. In any given day, you will get dozens of requests, right? The LinkedIn inbox overflows. Would love to catch up for a coffee, or all the requests that come through. You need to be able to be really clear on what you're accepting and what you're not, and why. And so for me, those two boundaries, or maybe they're not boundaries, but the indicators of what brings me energy is, I am an entrepreneur. I love making money. So I am going to prioritize commercial gain in those requests. I'm scanning, where's my commercial gain, right? I'm also looking for, how do we top me up emotionally and energetically? And, Trevor Young says, hey, let's do a podcast. I get to hang with Trevor. That's fun, right?
I slide into your DMs.
That's it, right? But that's an example of, we have an established relationship. We haven't caught up for ages. This is a lovely way to reconnect. It brings me joy. So it's not about, and I've seen all the time hacks out there and how you carve off your diary and calendar and all that kind of stuff. That doesn't work for me. Being really clear around what do I have the energy for? How am I going to spend it? And what value will that bring for me? And then being okay to say no, right? It's okay to say no. Or if someone sends you a request that actually isn't a request, or, you get these really sometimes strange messages that I'm like, well, what are they actually asking? And I'm like, it's okay not to reply. If they haven't been clear in their request, it's not on me to try and interpret.
Good point. Good
right?
point.
And I think we can, or I see a lot of people getting very caught up and frustrated by those kind of things, where I'm like, it's not on you to help people get clear in their communication.
And if you're a people pleaser, that's where it's going to be more difficult, to go through
Absolutely.
that. But to me, it sounds like this is very much an intuitive thing, albeit you've sort of got freedom within boundaries.
You got to know, you got to be able to tap into, how am I feeling at this point in time?
So
right?
It's a self-awareness play.
It's mindfulness.
Yep.
And so that's mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually. How am I feeling? And if you can't answer those 4 questions, then it gets very difficult to prioritize what you're doing.
And I guess that's the thing with, the calendar hacks and all of that. It becomes overwhelming as well. I mean, I've looked at that sort of stuff, but it really doesn't interest me. I'm taking more of probably an organic, intuitive approach to that as well. Maybe without putting, labels on any of it, but it is something. It is, when now you've said it, it is a mindfulness thing. It's self-awareness. You've got to think your way through it. So we've got grace and energy is more important than time, and now you've got done is more important than perfect. Perfection stalls momentum. I ship, then I shape. This has taken some time to learn. Walk us through that, because I'm a massive believer in and this has been probably a content thing, is, I'm working with people in corporate and entrepreneurs and thought leaders. They always want that perfection, but I think it spills out. It's more than just content, but that's probably where this has all come up. What is it? Getting it done is better than...
done is better than perfect, right? How can I possibly be teaching in the space of Agile with not living and breathing that part of it? But again, like the self-compassion piece, if I think about over the years, I think once I got past 45, it was really, learning about the power of vulnerability, of self-compassion, of grace. And that enabled me to reduce the perfectionist.
Right.
Because it was the perfectionist that was slowing me down, that was making life uncomfortable, that was comparing everywhere else.
Yeah.
And so I do think that's a with age kind of journey for a lot of people. And you talk about the leaders that you work with, that whole whatever I put out there is a it's a reflection of me. And if I'm not comfortable with being imperfect, then I'm not going to be comfortable with putting out something that has errors in it or isn't quite well thought through. And this is where working out loud is really important, because part of the ethos of working out loud is I'm always sharing stuff that's never finished, so it's never going to be perfect.
Yeah.
And it takes the pressure off. Now, when you take the pressure off, you can do a lot.
Yes, indeed.
That's the thing.
And what we're not saying here is don't be professional. Is that the word? We're not saying it's not about not being professional. I mean, you're going to put out a book. I'm sure that you'll be perfecting that book within an inch of its life. But as you just said, the putting out the content out there, having room to move and look at things that otherwise you also, this is perfect and I'm the oracle, and and that's never going to land with anyone.
No.
And I think the vulnerability piece slides into this nicely, doesn't it? Is I don't know everything, and how can you possibly know everything these days when everything's moving so quickly? But this is what I'm thinking at the moment, and this is what's on my mind, and hey, this is a concept that I'm building and I'm putting out there. What do you guys think? And be prepared to stand behind it, and be prepared to also, that's not a bad idea. I didn't think of that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's the real value for me, is sometimes you've got better thinkers engaging with your work and pointing things out. I always talk about, my mantra is, as I teach, so do I learn. As I learn, so do I teach. And that's such an important reciprocal relationship with sharing, understanding, improving what you do, you know.
And if we lock it back to social media too, I guess in the early days, Twitter was really, 140 characters and then went up to 280. But, you couldn't say everything you wanted to. You'd want to get as much as you could in a 140 character, and that really helped your editing skills for sure. But you were never going to write a screed that's 100% perfect, hardly, because you just didn't have the room to do it. And I think, that's where social media's been interesting. Of course, we went through the Instagram phase where, the influencers and everything's perfect, and we know underneath that that's not the case. And then along comes TikTok, where the rawness and the imperfection is actually the selling point. And that's why we gravitate to that. And now we're seeing Instagram Reels going, well, there's a swing back against the perfection of influencers and the people that are doing well. Even on YouTube, I see now that, some of the real standouts on YouTube building big audiences and getting lots of views are people just walking around riffing. And they tend to be older too, because they've got the wisdom and the runs on the board and the scars on the knuckles. And that's a sort of a sub-genre that's really taking off, where you've got older people who have been in the game, who've been in the trenches, raw video, and they're just talking to camera and riffing on topics. So not just older people doing that, by the way, not just midlifers doing that, but, there's some younger people that are going down that raw path and unedited. And it is going off. So there's a little lesson there, I think, about
there's hope for me yet on YouTube.
YouTube's the bomb. Well, you're over 16, so in Australia they're trying to ban YouTube for under 16s, which has a snowflake's chance in hell of actually succeeding. So that's a side path we could take forever on that one. Let's move on. So I like that one. Done is more important than perfection. Yep. Number 4, and we've sort of touched on this a little bit, but tech and tools, always part of the conversation. And you've written here, AI and automation carves out space for health, for conversations, for a social life, for rest, for the next idea, for time on the porch with a coffee. Walk me through, what's your approach to tech and tools?
I'm a fairly heavy user of automation and AI. Or comparatively, again, based on other conversations I'm having. And for me, it's really about identifying what are the repetitive activities in my work life that I can automate, that creates space, buys me time back.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, you know, the interesting thing I'm coming up, like the interesting thing that I'm finding in this space at the moment is it's almost like a shame, Trevor, that people are trying to disguise the fact that they're using AI or automation instead of being open and transparent about it. As if, and I do think it's also interesting, like what it's going to mean for us, for those of us that consult who are used to, you know, perhaps more billable hours, when you might be using AI or tools now to supplement your thinking, and you're doing, you know, your output is in
Quicker.
demonstrably less time. So are you declaring to clients that, you know, you use AI, or what is it? Are clients requesting a level of visibility of tell us what AI that you're using? And anyway, probably completely separate to the conversation we're having, but I'm finding this really interesting at the moment because for me, I don't think I'm actually trying to cram more into my day with the use of AI and automation. It literally is making sure that it's a better balanced day. Whereas I think I'm seeing other people going, well, actually, we can do more because we're using AI and automation. So
yeah, and doing it, you know, automation or AI and automation with humanity is the key there. But I mean, at a base level of what you're talking about there, people can now say, oh, I can write a book in a day, you know, and so they get it done, but it's not going to be a very good book. Or they'll say, I can, you know, if I can do one post in 30 seconds, why not do 10 posts on LinkedIn and bang them all out, you know? And it's the same sort of theory as I can do more, so let's continue to ratchet it up. What you're saying is it helps me, or it helps you, you know, smooth out your day a lot more and give you more time and energy back.
Yeah, and look, I think that's a good example because I absolutely do use AI to batch produce, right? Now, my thinking time is put through what is the structure of what I want, where is the consistency, you know, what are the prompts that I'm using. But that's been established over, you know, my brand has been established over a very long period of time, which means that I can actually set up the structure of what I want and how I do it in a way that, yes, I can schedule what LinkedIn has a limit of 10 posts, I think it is. And I can batch create based on the concepts that I'm generating, you know. But there's this thinking time before.
Yes.
To go, okay, what are my key messages, the things that I want to focus on for the next quarter? What is my input into that to use AI to do it? Now, that, you know, that I can do in half a day what traditionally I might have been scrambling for, I need to do another LinkedIn post this week and what am I going to do it about? And, you know, where you lose much more than half a day on just one post is an incredible saving.
Oh, and I've always loved the batch production and done it with clients for, you know, many, many, many years. And, you know, whether it's videoing him in a room and, you know, we film them until they get really tetchy. But you get it all done. You get it done. But what you're doing is you have to plan it, don't you? So batch production of content is all about planning, and then that makes it a strategic thing rather than, oh, shit, what have I got to do today? You know, and you default to what's on your mind at the time.
Yeah, like with the business, I have the content pillars, right? So I've already thought about what are the content pillars for the business, and I'll do a 12-month plan up to go, okay, now I've done research with our customers. I know what their pain points are. Each month, let's pick a pain point as our theme for the month. I know that I want 9 to 10 posts that month, which will be spread across 4 to 5 different content pillars. And so it actually becomes a bit of a numbers Tetris, right? To work out, okay, that means that any month we're going to need 24 posts on this particular content across these 10 themes, plug and play, and you can schedule them out well in advance. Now, once a month, I'm still jumping into Buffer, reviewing what I've got lined up. Does that still make sense? Has something happened that has made that age particularly badly? Or, do you know what I mean? Like, so it doesn't take away your responsibility
No.
to look at things strategically and what it is.
But you're not outsourcing your thinking as well. I mean, it's very what you're doing there is using AI in an incredibly smart way, but it's also using tools. Buffer is a social media scheduling tool, and know what you need to do, what tools are out there that can help you, and it's being mindful and intentional about it, and how can it save you time, and obviously that will save you time, but you'll also find time to come in, like with this article we're talking about, this LinkedIn post, the in the moment stuff that I can write about this now and then. So that's I've always preached this. You have the spine, the strategic content that really builds the narrative of your business, and then you do the in the moments that it frees you up then to do the in the moment stuff that this is what's on my mind, build in public, all of that sort of stuff. It's a great lesson right there, Jen.
And that was a great example, right? Because that was totally in the moment. I wrote it. I then gave it to AI. I said, make it better.
Yep.
I looked at, and now my AI has 500,000 words of my life in it.
Yep.
So it usually does a better job of what I've written and references all of my manuscripts and things like that. That said, what I got back, I was like, oh, this feels a bit soulless. This is not me. And I'm not sure why, but I actually reverted back to my original post and wordsmithed it myself, because this was an intensely personal post that Chad was never going to be able to perfect.
Do you call AI Chad as well? So do I. We're on the same wavelength.
Do you call yours Chad?
Chad, yep.
There you go.
Chad.
So, my Chad didn't nail it. And, I had to revert back to, well, it wasn't I had to, it was a better post for retaining that level of imperfection.
Yep. It's such a great lesson right there. And and we're all learning along the way, but this is why these conversations are important, because, as people probably back there sitting, grappling with this of, I'm using AI, but it's not my voice, but isn't AI making it better? And give yourself permission to go back and mess it up.
Yeah.
It's we're all going to face this in our business life and corporate life. So it's good to understand your philosophy on this stuff and where you sit on it, I think is really, really important. All right, tech and tools. We could do a whole thing on tech and tools, but we're going to take a sidebar now. Not a sidebar, but number 5 for you, movement matters. Walk us through, and that leads back to point 1, which was grace. Just a quick riff on this, because I think everyone will be nodding their head in agreement on this one.
Yeah, look, if I'm not moving physically, then I struggle mentally. It just affects my ability to do things. And so what I've found for me, that 2 strength sessions a week and an average of 7,000 steps a day. So again, people will tell you 10,000 steps. I'm like, give yourself grace. 7,000 is sufficient for my cardiovascular health and, where my body is at, to actually be a really good practice. Now, if I make 9,000 in a day or 12,000, that's awesome. But let's aim for an average of that. And that, for me, that is achievable in my life. Would I like to be doing more? Yes. I'd love to be doing an extra yoga class or this or that. And in the weeks where I'm using AI and automation well, I probably will, but others.
See point 1, grace.
Yeah, grace. That's it. Yeah.
As an aside, this whole 7,000, 10,000 was never really, I think it was almost a marketing thing in the
marketing point.
In the first thing. And everyone's grasping, this is but when a message can just go nuts across the world now and everyone takes it as gospel, apparently, and I've read a few medical type articles. I'm not sitting there reading Doctor's Quarterly or anything, but there's no appreciable difference in terms of getting value between 7,000 steps. That's when value kicks in, and 10,000. Is 10,000 better than 7? Absolutely. But you start deriving value not from 10, but from 7,000 steps.
But it's not if you've got arthritic hips, right? That's when you're actually kicking up inflammation. So yeah, that's mindfulness.
Movement and grace. Number 6, creativity and play also matter. I am attentive to making space for creativity and playfulness daily. This plus a liberal dose of laughing at myself or other things feed the brain in the very best way. Unpack that for us.
This becomes most visible to me when I'm not doing well, either business-wise or emotionally and energetically. And, you stop and do a bit of an audit and you go, oh, I'm not being very playful, or I've been very serious, or I've been, I haven't been creative. I haven't had the paints out for a while, or, played with a recipe or done things like that. So I do have to be mindful in this space and go, okay, what does play look like today? What does being creative look like today? And, I want to give a shout out to Trudy Boatwright on LinkedIn. She does a wonderful job of unpacking little moments of playfulness and how you can be more playful in the life that you live. When I'm doing that, and again, I was in a Pilates class yesterday, and a small group Pilates, and one of the women had a serious incident which involved a splinter that had required plastic surgery to get the splinter out. And I'm like, what if that becomes your origin story of your superpower? And that in the same way that Spider-Man was bitten by a spider, you've been stabbed by a splinter. And now you only have to look at anything wood and make it splinter in front of you. Now, that was just a little moment of playful creativity, but I thought, you know what I want to do this week? I want to go to Canva and see if I can create an image of this woman as a superpower, use the whole splinter story and bring it back to her in a little card next Monday, because it's playful and it's creative and it's fun and it's acknowledging a life moment that was actually really bloody painful. Now, how does that add value to my world? I don't know. It was a fun moment.
Not everything has to add dollars in the bank.
Yeah, but it created really good hormones in my brains that made me laugh and made me smile and think about it. Another friend who I caught up with coffee recently, she was struggling with what to do for a child's birthday party, and the kid was into dragons. I was like, why don't you create a dragon hunt? How to hunt for a dragon in the suburb, and we're going to look for anywhere there's steam could be signs that it's coming out of the dragons. And so we kind of really brainstormed all the signs that you could find in the local suburb that might indicate a dragon was lurking. And it was just really playful and it was really fun. And it made us both smile, and that smiling generates the endorphins that, means for a healthier brain, and
that's it.
Might mean that I'm more productive when it comes to sitting down at the computer and doing something. So, yeah.
And take away the seriousness of life.
Yeah.
Nice.
Which leads us to point 7.
You beat me to it. Wellness influencer avoidance. This sort of sticks out of all of these things. Walk us through it. You avoid or limit time with wellness influencers.
When you are a woman of a certain age, Trevor, you get targeted a lot on social media, and you get targeted about menopause, you get targeted about ADHD, you get targeted about joint inflammation. There's a lot out there, and there are a lot of wellness influencers. And if you want to pay attention to that, you can get really lost in this space of what I call the worried well, where actually you're fine, but you've started looking for the symptoms they're talking about. And that is just a spiraling down the drain experience. So it's, big avoidance of those type of people because they do not enhance my life.
Yep.
And I'm a believer in science, right? I'm a queen of science, and I believe that you seek help when you are not well. But those people who are trying to influence you usually have got product to sell, and it's not helpful.
And the algos are targeting you as well. Conscious of time, we'll better whip through a few more of these. Yep. 8 is asynchronous, a flexible life.
Yep.
And you work, you were just saying here, you work at 5 a.m. for the North American meeting. Sometimes it's 9 p.m. for UK and Europe. Sometimes you sleep in on a Tuesday, no guilt experience. It balances, comes back to grace.
Yep. And protecting your energy, being mindful of your energy.
Don't worry about not sleeping in. If you have to, sleep in because you're doing the work, you're pulling the hours, but take time off. Number 9, care for others.
9 and 10 are the same theme. So I find it really important to be caring for others and acknowledging people care for you. And that if that care is a central core in your life, being a caring person, that there's a reciprocity in it. But if you don't acknowledge that people actually care for you, I think that, we can push on in life without actually acknowledging that there are a lot of people out there who support you, who care for you, who love you. And you need to be attentive to recognizing that to be able to receive it. So that's been kind of an important thing in how I show up and what I do.
And as you said, you're learning compassion along the way. As the years come through, and then all of a sudden these things, there's a lot of threads that all join these things together, aren't there?
Yep.
And we'll finish with the last one. Silver hair, solid lessons, 30 plus years in organised org life, I suppose it's organisational life, has taught me to discern what's worth energy, make decisions quicker and navigate uncertainty.
Yeah.
It's all there.
Look, I mean, and this is the thing, people who say, how do you do so much? How do you do what you do? A lot of the times they're a lot younger. And there's, we've talked about this in our space for the longest time, the importance of building community, right? You can't fast track. Having a following, an audience, any of those kind of things, no matter how good your content is that you're putting out, there is a building of knowledge, of discernment, of wisdom, of mistakes, that actually go into how you make really, do better based on the experience you've had in the past. And you just can't accelerate that without a bit of age on you, personally, I think.
And that's a great point to finish up on, Jen, and thank you for sharing all this 11-part answer to how do you do so much? And that really is, you get to a point where, and this is what the whole ethos of Crank the Third is that, you're not slowing down. You've actually got things to do. You've still got, energy and runs on the board and, ideas and how can you get it all done? But you've got the wisdom to go with it. And, some of the opportunities available to people now, I know we hear about ageism in the marketplace and everything, but what we're also seeing is that there's a return to, people with experience and wisdom, which is just gold in today's business world.
I agree. I don't want to invalidate those people who are really struggling with ageism because I think people do.
Yeah, absolutely.
But gosh, I'm seeing opportunities. Like it is an exciting time.
Yeah, and we've got the tool, and we've covered it. We've got the tools, we've got the tech, we've got our own understanding and self-awareness, but we've got a body of work for credibility. We're trusted, got the knowledge. How do we can now do a global audience? We don't have to work on a local level, and that wisdom can travel. But it's a matter of embracing it. It is a matter of embracing it, and it's exciting. And we're seeing examples, and this podcast is full of examples of people doing amazing things in what I call the third chapter.
Thank
There we
you
go.
for that service in sharing.
Well, it's all part of the game. It's all part of the interest, and absolutely, there's a lot of good stories out there to tell, and I love hearing them and being able to share them. And I'm very grateful for people like yourself, Jen, coming on the show and sharing your story and your ideas and insights, and particularly, taking a few layers off your personal and professional life for us. Thank you.
Sure. Thanks for having me.